Okay, we took a look at this, and my brain was not allowing me to think, and then I got the phone call, so it really wasn't thinking after that. But I have sat and looked at this and made sure I knew what was going on. We're gonna take the information, 25 miles per hour times 9 non-highway hours plus 60 miles an hour times highway hours equals 240 miles, and we're gonna assign the x and the y variables and write the standard equation, okay? The way you do that, if you think about what are the two parts of this that we don't know? What are the two pieces that we don't know? We don't have a definite answer for. Madison. Non-highway hours and highway hours. So you assign the x and the y to those pieces. So in this case, we're going to say x is the non-highway. That'll work. And we're going to say the y is the highway. Okay? And then we write the equation. Well, the equation is simply 25x plus 60y equals 240 miles. Okay? Given that information, how would you use that information to be able to graph the equation? Maddie? Solve for y. Okay? And if you solve for y, you should be subtracting 25x from both sides or adding the negative. Okay? So that gives me 60y equals negative 25x plus 240. Would I be able to graph that then? And I've got a skip going on. I need to clean the projector eye or whatever it is. Okay? You now have a y-intercept, don't you? What's the y-intercept now? Natalie, what's the y-intercept of this equation now? Or do I need to finish solving now that if I stop and think? Don't I need to get y completely by itself before I have that? Yeah. So if I did that, I've got to divide by 60. Do you agree? Divide every piece by 60. Get that where I can move it. Oh. You can divide each of the pieces by 60. You end up with y by itself. And y is equal, what is negative 25 divided by 60? Can that be simplified? Ridley.
When I read it, I got 0.41666.
Okay. So what if I leave it as a fraction and just simplify my fraction? Shelby. 5 twelfths, negative 5 twelfths, x plus, what happens when we divide 240 by 60, Bryn? Plus 4. Good. Okay, now, Natalie, what's my y-intercept now? 4. And what's my slope? What's the slope? Negative 5 twelfths. I want everybody to go get a Chrome, and you're going to go on the Chrome to a graphing program, and you're going to graph this on the computer. We're going to make that graphing a little bit easier for right now.
Number 7 is gone.
Is it checked out? I've put a program up there that this is where I want you to go. www.desmos.com. If you'll type that into the URL, /calculator. I guess it's desmos.com/calculator. When you get there, Cadence? Okay. When you get there, take the equation of our line that we have now, which somebody tell me because I've got the different screen open. Y equals -5/12.
You have to put
Okay. Let's see if we can get it to. Did yours graph, kiddos?
Shouldn't yours be y equals?
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. I didn't put my Y over there. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Now, as long as you've got it there, notice what happens if you make that scale larger or smaller.
The number is
Okay. If I make it smaller, I can see more of it. If I make it larger, my numbers change. They go up to match it.
so I can see the work process.
You want me to, which part are you on?
Where it crosses the x-axis.
Or the Y?
Y.
Okay, hang on a minute. If I,
The x, I'm sorry.
I can't get it to,
Hit the home button and we'll
what, the home button
I'm just making sure I'm right, because I'm having to
over here?
change the scale on this thing. Hit the home button and it'll default.
Hit it, because I don't know where it is. There we go. Is that better?
10
It's at,
ish. No, not quite 10. Like 9.
I'm at 4 and I'm
Like
at 9.6, they tell me.
Okay, I'm like, it's 9-ish.
9-ish. Okay. Do you see how that works though? When you go playing with the size of that scale, it changes the way that looks a lot. Okay. If I make it smaller, and this is, like I said, remember we've talked in the past about what newspapers and what the government anybody that wants you to look at a graph to see things a certain way, how they can change it and make it look different. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of. What do you think about the graphing calculator?
It's awesome.
It's awesome. When you're doing your homework, you can always check using a graphing calculator. We don't have graphing calculators in the classroom because they run about, a cheap one's probably $200. So that's why we don't have them, but we do have them on the Chromes. So we're going to be kind of using that. You'll also have them available on the state assessment. So I want you to kind of play with this a little bit. All right, so if I go back to where we were at. Is this one it? There we go. Now, what about the second one? Let's go ahead and work that second one. So I want you to set up the equation here. I want everybody here to set up the equation for number 2. Oops. Just a minute, I'll pull it back down. Actually, just get it set up. Because I'm pretty certain you can go from there. Okay? What's that equation going to look like? Justin.
5x plus 10y equals 30.
Justin says 5x plus 10y equals 30. Does everybody see what x stands for? Haley, what does the x stand for?
The X stands for number of times.
Good, it's the number of hats. What is the y standing for in this case, Grace?
Number of t-shirts.
Good job, number of t-shirts, okay? Now, I heard a how did you. What's the how did you? How did you enter 5/12 on that? You use the -5 and then the division or the slash and then the 12, okay? All right, now that we've got that, could we graph it from here? No. Not really. I mean, there's a couple of things we could do. So what should we do before we try to graph it, Olivia? Simplify. So go ahead and get it simplified. I want everybody to simplify. Solve for y. Y equals what? Y equals what, Annie?
Negative 1/2 x plus 3.
Plus 3?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to put into your graphing calculator later y equals -1/2 x plus 3. I want you to graph it. Because now, could you graph it without that calculator? What two pieces did you need to be able to graph? Cadence?
Slope
Slope and
and y-intercept.
y-intercept. Do I have those two pieces now? What does the slope mean? Interpret that slope. According to our story that we have, what does the slope mean? Shelby,
For every number, like one t-shirt, there is 2 hats.
okay? 1 to 2, good. All right, now I think I want you guys to graph it, and I'm gonna get rid of this one so I don't have more than one graph on. Okay?
You can put the keyboard on.
Oh, I see that down there. Okay. Give me the standard form of this equation that we had. What was the standard form that we started with? Joey?
10y equals -5x plus 30. Wait, no. Wait.
Before we started moving it around, what did we have on it? What did we have before we started moving things and solving for y? What did we have, Madison?
5x plus 10y equals 30.
Plus. Does your line look like this one? The graphing calculator will take it in standard form and graph it for you. Now, I'm going to expect you to be able to identify that slope-intercept form. But the graphing calculator can do it this way. Okay, pretty nice, right? Once you get it graphed, you have a way that you can check it to make sure everything's where it needs to be. Okay? You can check your work. Good. Let's see, move this back out of the way. So let's go on. Remember, we were talking yesterday about the standard form, and we've got it in our foldable, right? The standard form of a linear equation is A times X plus B times Y equals C. But A and X cannot both be 0 at the same time. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Do what? A and B. Yeah, A and B cannot be 0 at the same time. Why not? Why can A and B not be 0 at the same time? Why not? It wouldn't work because 0 plus 0 is gonna be equal to,
0.
and the fact that they are two different variables. If they wanted them both to be 0 there, it'd have to be just A equals 0. Okay, because A is a specific value all to its own, and B has to be its own value. They can't be the same. Okay? Use your graphing calculator, graph it.
Do you want us to simplify down?
I also wanted you to write that in the slope-intercept form. Write this equation in slope-intercept form. That's what we've been doing, right? Make sure we can take the standard form and turn it into slope-intercept.
Excuse me.
Give me the standard or the slope-intercept form of that equation.
Try it and then.
Oh, I like that idea. I like that idea. Yeah, you got some parabolas going there, do you? They are non-linear?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, now, yes, you did. Okay,
Did you try it?
all right. Here's an idea. Put that in here as one of them. Let it graph it.
Here it is. See if you can graph that.
Okay, now, put this one, see where you can have another one, put a plus there and get yourself another line. Okay. I'm not, how do you get the second line? I'm looking upside down.
All you have to do
You
is
just
click
click right
right
below it.
Click right
Or you
below
can
it then.
click on it and push
Okay,
it
you
down.
got it? Now put this line in and see if they're the same line.
Where's which line?
Put this, the standard form in.
Like a circle, like a circle.
Okay, I like this. As I walked around, Natalie said, I graphed the standard form and I graphed what I thought was the y-intercept formula. If they're the same, you know you're right. If they're not the same, you know you've got an error in your process of getting to the standard or to the slope-intercept. I like that. I hadn't thought about that. Nice job. So, what is the slope-intercept formula? What's it gonna look like there? Great, or, Haley?
It'll be y equals 2 minus 2. 2/3 x.
-2 or plus a -2, either way would be acceptable, okay? If you don't have this, or when you graph both lines, they don't match up, then you know you've got an error. That's kind of a self-check. You know, I like that. It's a really nice self-check. So that's one way to do it. I turn it into, I go from the standard to the slope-intercept. This is our standard, and this is our slope-intercept. Okay? 'Cause what if, we've used the standard, we've used the slope intercept. What if we use, what if we use the x and y intercepts? Could we take the equation they give us and solve for the x and y intercept and graph? What do you think? How many of you think we could do that? How many of you don't have a clue? Okay. How do I solve for the x and y intercept? What do I know about when I go to find out x and y intercept? How do I solve for it there?
They both have ones in front of them.
These do, I agree. Okay? But what do I know about the x-intercept? It's where the line crosses the x-axis, right? What is the y value always if I'm looking at my x-intercept?
Isn't it a 0?
It is. So what if I said, what if I said x plus 0 equals 2? What is x? What is x?
It's a negative.
In this case, x equals 2. So I've got a value here, I've got a 2 0 point. Do you agree?
That's a negative.
Oh, thank you. Missed it. Negative 2. Okay? So that gives me one set of points, right? I need 2 sets before I can graph. So what is the y-intercept? What is the y-intercept? Cadence? If I'm looking at the y-intercept, I'm on the y-axis, what is the value of x? Always. 0. So what is 0 plus y equals negative 2?
Negative 2.
Y equals negative 2. There's my other set of points. Can I graph it?
Yes.
So I don't always have to solve into slope-intercept formula. I could do it this way. Okay, another way of doing it. Have you graphed it, folks? Graph it on your graphing calculator. Excuse me. Excuse me. There you go. Now check your intercepts and see if this is what we had figured out. It intercepts there, negative 2. Okay, so is it a 2, negative 2 there on the x also? So are we correct? Is that a positive or a negative slope? Look at the way it's going. Negative, okay. Good. Has everybody got it graphed? Now, do you type in y equals negative 2 to be able to graph it?
No.
That doesn't work, does it? That would give you what kind of a line if you typed in y equals negative 2? What kind of a line do we get if we type in y equals negative 2? What do we get, G? A horizontal line. That won't work for us. But if you type in x plus y equals negative 2, you get a line. Is it positive or negative? Is the slope positive or negative in this one? Negative. Good. Okay. Let me ask you this. I want you to do one more. Do number 2. I want you to find the x and y intercepts for number 2. You find the x and y intercept. I'm gonna get that fixed. guys, I don't want you to use the graphing calculator to give you the X and Y intercept. You're not always gonna have it. You gotta be able to do it on your own. I know you can use it now that I've showed it to you. But you won't necessarily have that from when you take a test. You gotta be able to find it on your own. Once you have calculated the X and Y, then check your graph and make sure it matches.
Are you gonna put a zero in? Look, put a zero in here.
Is that positive or negative?
Start here. And then a zero. That's two.
So I'm not sure it would have matched.
So that's
Look at
negative.
it again.
Y equals, okay?
The negative, and times the negative, it'd have to be a negative, right?
Yeah.
So does it
Yeah.
match your graph then?
So now you're
We're
gonna
not supposed to
say
solve it.
-1/2.
It does. Do what?
I said, we're not supposed to solve.
Nope, I just want you to find the X and Y. Once you get those, this is what I want you to see if that works. Did it match?
Put a
Yeah.
zero in here.
Match.
Zero to solve for X.
Do what?
No.
Okay.
Not on this one.
Anybody's X and Y intercept that they calculated did not match their graph? Did anybody not match the graph when you calculated the X and Y? G? Okay, let me ask you this, G. Did you let X be 0? And if X is 0, then you would have had 0 plus 2Y equals 6. Do you agree with that? And at that point, you would have Y equals 3. Do you agree with that? So this point is 0, 3. Okay? Now, if I let Y equal 0, I would have negative 1/2 X plus 0 equals 6. How do I get rid of the negative 1/2? Divide it out or multiply by a negative 2. Do you agree? So that gives me X equals, well, what is 6 times negative 2? Pardon?
6 times 2.
Negative 12. So the second point is negative 12, 0. Those were my X, should have been my X and Y. Then if you look at your graph, does it match that? And do you see where I got it from? Anybody else? Okay?
You should have really zoomed in.
You cannot graph first. I want you to find your intercepts first, then graph.
If we were to graph them,
Cannot graph first.
we were gonna graph that one. To B. To B. We're gonna have to change our scale, right? Right? Because it's, what were our points? Negative, so X equals negative what? 6 times 2. 12, so you have negative 12, 0. So, our scale's gonna have to be different for this, right? So, 2, 4, right? Oh, that's, sorry, you're right. Good catch.
If this is X is,
Right, so there's that point where
if
cross
Y
Y
is
That's why I have.
right there, 3 0.
okay,
It's gonna be kind of
and
a
wow,
wow.
Oh, in there.
you got so much stuff in here. Close them all out. And I'll leave you when you want, got it? That way you can see for sure where you're at, okay? Did anybody, okay, once you get your X and Y intercept, then check it on the graph. Get the X and Y intercept first. Ethan, what's your X intercept? Okay. Ethan, if I set Y equal to 0, I'm looking for a point where Y is 0. Okay? So I'm going to plug it in. So I'd have X plus 3 times 0 equals negative 3. What is the value of X? X equals negative 3. Okay? So that's this one. When I want to know about the y-intercept, if x is 0, what is y? Plug in the 0 for x and solve for y. Okay? So what's y going to be in that case? I've got to divide by 3 on both sides. And what kind of a 1? Good. Y equals negative 1. Now I can go to the graphing calculator and graph it using this equation that they gave me, the standard equation, and see if my intercepts are correct. Make sure everybody's got it. Does everybody see how we're getting there? G? Okay, G, when you're using intercepts, just think of it this way. I want to know what happens if one of the two sides is 0. And then you solve that equation. If I have an intercept, one of the two axes, I'm setting on 0. Because in order to cross the y, I have to be at 0 on x. Does that make sense? And in order to cross the axis of the x, I have to be on 0 for y, because that means I go out, but I never go up or down. Okay? So all you have to do is just decide, okay, I've got this, and even if you're not sure whether you're looking here for the x or the y intercept, make one of them 0, and you'll see then what the other one is. Does that make sense? And once you plug that in, then you just automatically, you just solve it. Because you only have one variable there. When I plug in that 0 for the y value, I only have x to solve for. So I solve for x. If I plug in 0 for the x value, I only have a y left. And I solve for my y. Okay? There we go. Now, they have given you an equation. What format is that equation being written in? What format is this equation? What's its format? Class? It's standard. This is the standard formula right there. Oops. Not being nice to me. Standard formula right there. Okay? You have $6 to spend on apples and bananas. Graph the equation 1.5x plus 6/10 y equals 6, where x is the number of pounds of apples and y is the number of pounds of bananas. Now, when you're graphing, you have to make sure how you set your graph up. Okay? You have to know. It tells me what's the y-axis going to be labeled. What do I need to label that y-axis? This is so I'll be able to interpret it later. Justin?
Pounds of apples.
Okay. Says y is Look again at the story. Is it my apples? Is it, what is it, Joey?
Pounds of bananas.
Pounds of bananas, good. So this is pounds of bananas. And what's the x-axis labeled then? What's it gonna be, Ty?
Pounds of apples.
Pounds apples, okay? This way, when you go to interpret the slope, you know what you're talking about. You know, you already got it, okay? So graph the equation. You can use what you know and graph the equation.
Solve it. Okay, solve it.
Probably, you know, you're supposed to be using the calculator to check it. So you need to either come up with the x and y intercepts, or you need to put it in slope intercept form. Either way is acceptable on your paper, because you're gonna have to be able to do both. G, if that solving for x and y intercept is still giving, do this one in x and y for yourself. Understand? Good. Good. Good.
Zero.
Gee, get yourself over there and get that calculator.
Number times zero is
What? Maybe that's the problem.
no, not yet. No, why isn't one now? Doesn't x be 0.61 equals 6. If I both sides solve, what is 6 divided by 6/10? 10. So y equals 10. So that point is 0, 10, because x is 0, so it's 0. So on this side, we're gonna make y 0.
Now, put that number, so right here, put that into your Chrome and see if that matches on the other one. Right? And you will look.
So now it's 1 is 5/10 x. We're gonna keep x. And we're gonna replace y. So we have 1 and 5/10.
Got it? Does that make sense now? What's happening?
Okay, so how do you get rid of the 1 and 5/10? You get rid of 1 and 5/10.
Get your calculator.
It's the inverse. Right, so you're gonna divide. Divide by 1 and 5/10, and it equals what? So x equals 4. So now we are
I
gonna
mean,
graph
it's a short
that.
walk to the calculator.
2, 6, 8, 10.
You should start go fund.
No, everything's just
No, not on Friday.
Now you're gonna use that. So you can label this.
Okay,
It's right
so
there.
what's this point then?
So where does it cross?
10,
It's not 10,
It's
10.
0, 10.
X is,
What's that parentheses, that's one.
so where does it cross Y?
Let the y be 0 and solve
10,
for x.
so put your dot on 10.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Where does it cross X?
what is the y-intercept of this graph? What is my y-intercept? Somebody that hasn't talked to me. Lindsay, I don't think I've heard from you. The y-intercept is 10. The x-intercept is what? What's the x-intercept? Bryn, what's the x-intercept? The x-intercept is 4. or the 0.40, or the 0.010, okay? Now, it says interpret the intercepts. What does it mean that the y-intercept is 10? What does that mean? If the y-intercept is 10, what does it mean? 10. Talk to me, Ty.
I was gonna say that's where it like crosses.
Yeah, but interpret it. In relationship to the story, what does it mean, Olivia?
10 apples for every 10
If the y-intercept is 10, I've got 0, 10, what does that tell me? Good try. G?
4 pounds of apples for every 10 pounds of bananas.
Guys, think about it again. I'm up here at 10, and I'm gonna just give me a spot here, and I got 4 down here, and my line's going something like that. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I don't have it leveled, but you get my point. What does the y-intercept of 10 tell you in relationship to that story? Shelby?
Need 10 bananas and 4 apples.
Try again. The 0.010 tells you what? 010 tells you what, Lindsay?
4 pounds of apples.
010 tells you what? Madison?
0 pounds of apples for every 10 pounds of bananas.
True. So what does that tell you in real life? You're right. What does that tell you in real life, Molly? You have 0. I agree. Go back to the story. Ty.
I was gonna say for every 4 pounds of apples.
Nope, Ty. Good try. G.
Okay. So since it's 10 pounds of bananas, you do 10 times 0.660.
Are you wanting to know how much
And
money you
then-
can spend?
Yeah, and then you do 10 times
How much are you
0.660.
gonna buy with your money?
And then that'd be
How much you gonna buy with your money, folks? If I got 10 pounds of bananas, can I buy anything else? No, why not?
You're out of money.
of bananas for $6.
Those 10 pounds of bananas cost me $6. I don't get any apples. That's what that means. I've spent my money. If I want apples, I'm just out of luck because I'm broke. At the same time, the x-intercept of 4 tells you what? What does the x-intercept of 4 tell you? Ridley.
You only buy 4 pounds of apples.
Yeah. If you buy 4 pounds of apples, do you get any bananas? No. I like apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. If I buy all those apples, I get no bananas. Okay? In relationship to the story, that's what the interpretation here means. I got 4 pounds of apples and no bananas because I'm broke. Okay? That's the kind of stuff that it wants you to be able to interpret, because if you can do that, you understand what you're doing. Here is your assignment.
That's not much. Thank you.